Hi, welcome to RozeLeeMc. I'm Devin.
Hi, I'm Tommy.
Today, like I said, we're here to talk about Betsy DeVos being accepted as our Secretary of Education, also along with the downfall of what happened to Elizabeth Warren. I believe that was last night, right?
2 nights ago, but it was during the Senate confirmation of Attorney General Jeff Sessions.
All right. We're going to start with Betsy DeVos, obviously, because it happened first. We're going to talk about how she got elected in and what this means as a whole for our education system. And like I said before, it's going to be a no holds bar. The most we're going to be holding back on is our swearing. Because this is very heart heavy to me. I am very strong in the education system, and she is by far the worst pick. I would rather have Ronald McDonald run our education system, and he has no experience.
Like her.
Yeah, pretty much. All right. So Betsy DeVos was elected through the Senate. They agreed to have her there.
It came down to a 50-50 vote with everyone voting along party lines except for 2 Republicans. I would have to look it up again, but I believe they're from Alaska and Maine. They both cited her inexperience with public schools as the reason they dissented. And it was the first time in history that a vice president has come to break a tie in the confirmation of cabinet members, which Mike Pence voted to confirm her. So she passed by a vote of 51-50.
Yes. It's insane that it happened, but what can you do other than argue, which is what we're here to do. All right. So what DeVos is for, she's all for the idea of charter schools, also known as private schools. If you haven't seen or been to one, I envy your area. You live in a very rural area, if that is the possibility, though. Basically, what she's trying to say is she wants publicly funded schools, which would increase tax rates of wherever those are, just to pay for the schools. And they're going to be schools that are set up by the teachers, parents, or communities outside of the state school system, which means instead of having a basis of what you need to learn by, it's whatever the community thinks you need to learn by. This means things such as, oh, I live in a small little farming town. Most of my classes are probably going to be taught using agriculture. Yes, they may teach us math and higher level classes, but word problems, word association, it's all probably going to be connected to agriculture. Basically, they're going to be attempting to pre-design your jobs for you through how they're teaching you. Do you have anything you would like to add to this?
You said it's publicly funded charter schools, basically?
Yeah, publicly, like the community around it.
My problem with charter schools has always been that it makes education a profit business rather than just a service to educate our youth. And in my opinion, when things are run in terms of profit, there become a lot of negative outcomes and problems with that, like the prison, like our prison system in the United States is a for-profit system, and that's created a lot of corruption and a lot of misuse of power. My fear is that the same thing would happen in charter schools, but not only that, rather than like a normal charter school where it's just privately funded, now they're going to force us to fund these with our taxpayer dollars, which, in my opinion, is wrong because of what I've mentioned, like when you make something that should be a service for the betterment of our youth a profit industry, you're going to stop caring so much about the education of the children. You're just going to be caring about your bottom line financially and making sure you're not in the red, but you're in the black.
Yeah. I'm completely for the idea of taking tax money and putting it towards the schools, but not for a for-profit school. If we're taking our tax money and generating more in order to help school systems become better, to be able to help our students more, by all means do it. If it's for the students, I'm more for it. If it's for the actual profit of the company, no, that's just dumb. It's literally a waste of our money. The ACLU continuing on, the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Unions, said her work in how is they wording this? Said her work in Michigan was continuing on elevating for-profit schools with no consideration the harm it would do to the public schools. There was no evidence that charter schools are better than public schools. Basically, what I have here is saying, continuing on, that they don't want, that she wants for-profit private schools. She's all for the idea of this school is completely for profit, even though they're going to take money and utilize it for whatever they want, not even specifically for the students. But she's trying to back up and argue that that's better than a public school setting when she has no evidence backing up behind her saying that public schools are worse than charter schools. In my opinion, I personally think charter schools can be better. I have seen a couple charter schools that are better than public schools, but I've also seen private schools that just can't even compare to a public school.
Yeah, and I don't know if she's trying to cite any scientific data that is, possibly proving or leading towards proving that charter schools do perform better than public schools. But I do know that the woman has no experience with public schools. She's never been to one. None of her kids have ever been to one. Her kids have never had to borrow from the public education funds to go to college. So they have no experience when it comes to these public schools, which in my opinion is dangerous, because then that automatically it creates a bias in her ideologies.
I completely agree. Also, continuing on the charter school system, she has campaigned in Michigan for less oversights in charter schools. What this means is less oversights means there's not as many rules, regulations. The schools can basically do and teach whatever they want, which means this school down the road from you could be a creationist school where they're teaching that evolution's not a thing and that creationism through God was actually what happened, while this school down the street the other way could teach that evolution's a thing, but creationism's not. Now, I believe that evolution is the right path to teach in schools, and that there should be a separation between school and state, and also school and religion as well. I believe that schools should have their own thought process on what they teach, but they need to be able to teach what is proven. Science is science, guys. That's where we need to be. Would you like to add anything to this?
Just to further your point and back up your point, you may, in my opinion, I like Neil deGrasse Tyson. You may not, if it's your own opinion, but my favorite quote so far from Neil deGrasse Tyson has been, "That's the beauty of science, is it's true whether or not you believe in it."
All right. Now we're going to go back and talk a little bit about what her qualifications are, guys. Because believe it or not, she has one or two. So personally, though, what she is not is she's not an educator, obviously. She's not a leader of education, not an expert in the curriculum or in school governing. And realistically, she doesn't have relevant credential or experience for the job setting standards. And she's also, oh Jesus, I can't read my own writing, guys. We're falling apart. She's basically, what it is her only qualifications for the job is she is a voice of the job, a voice. And she's a voice because she's a lobbyist. For those of you who don't know, a lobbyist is a person who utilizes their wealth in order to basically buy an opinion and basically say, look, I'm rich. That means my opinion is valid because use whatever words here. And then she pays people or backs people through their campaign with money. And then those people are going to agree with what she says because they got the backing of money. That is her only input and credential she has. I didn't say she had good credentials. I just said she had credentials. And that was it. Would you like to add anything about this?
Yeah. Well, historically, if you remember your history classes, or if you took your history classes, one of the things you learn about post-Civil War United States is that President Ulysses S. Grant had one of the most corrupt cabinets around, and it's hard to really compare the two because it's such a different time frame. But to me, this is right up there along the lines of Ulysses S. Grant, in that this woman got her job because she campaigned for and donated money to the presidential campaign of Trump. So it's, again, like if I were to walk into a job I'm not qualified for, and rather than being told you're not qualified, you can't have this job, I just give them $200,000, and they're like, oh yeah, you could definitely have this job. That's the equivalent of what's going on here.
All right. Obviously, you can decide for yourself if you think that's bad or not.
Yeah.
Obviously,
we've done
stupid.
Some research, but we don't pretend to know everything about the topic.
If you guys have anything you'd like to input on us, always go ahead and do it. Continuing on, she had a performance grade at her confirmation hearing, and basically the way all of our information is coming from BBC. BBC is explaining it as a polite C- was her grade. Now, I want to look at this, and I guarantee if I had a kid and they got a C- and it was considered a polite C-, like they got bumped up from a D because the teacher's nice, I wouldn't be too happy about that. I would be like, cool, you passed the class, but I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh, I'm excited that I have this awesome kid. Like, that's how we should be treating all of our secretaries, is that we want the best that we can get, not average is a C, so let's get someone slightly below average.
Yeah, well, and in terms of, like, her not having a lot of credentials, and if you watch any of the footage from her hearing, she was grilled pretty hard by a lot of people who have some knowledge of public education, and it was very apparent that she had no relevant knowledge. She was very ignorant about policies in terms of public education. And to me, that, like, I'm not saying that people who are ignorant of something can't become experts or can't become aware of things, but it's not right to me that we're choosing someone who is so vastly ignorant of the problems that face our public education when there are more qualified individuals at large.
I completely agree. Continuing on with lack of knowledge of our systems, sadly, she seemed, when they were asking her questions during her conference, she seemed unfamiliar with the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act. This is a federal law, completely a federal law that anyone with any knowledge of education should have some sort of insight towards. It's a federal law that requires public schools to make accommodations for disabled students. She completely just had no awareness that this was a thing. When they started asking her about it, she started stumbling and trying to figure her way through it, but couldn't do anything with the topic, because basically what happened, it's the easiest way to explain it, is they asked her about what she thought about the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act. Sorry, it's a long name. I have to look at it. They asked her about it, and she had no idea what it was, and she had to think a while before she could come up with a response. And her response, I can try and find that. I do not know it off verbatim, but it was very vague and attempted to just basically overshadow the fact that she had no idea what was going on with it.
In the terms of Star Wars character K2SO, it was very vague and unconvincing.
The American Association of People with Disability has expressed much concern with the fact that she was unfamiliar with the idea and protections this law provides to students with disabilities. This is coming from one of the biggest protectors of our students that have disabilities in schools. and they're expressing concern for the safety of these students because she has no knowledge of the subject. This is big ideas such as this. We shouldn't have to have no knowledge. There should be some sort of knowledge. I don't care if it's minuscule because you can read up on it, but she has no knowledge. She's starting from scratch. I can guarantee that right now I have more knowledge than her on the Disabilities Act. This shouldn't be something that me, a regular ordinary person in society, has more knowledge than someone being elected as a secretary of the education department. That's my thought process on this. There's going to be one more thing we're going to talk about. Is there anything you wanted to add to this?
No, I feel like I've said everything that's relevant about her experience and her appointment to this position.
All right. Well, the last thing. This is a very hard thing to talk about that someone would actually bring up, in my opinion. The most striking moment, the biggest thing that came up during the whole confirmation, is there was a point where she was discussing whether or not that we should allow firearms in our schools. She believes that firearms should be allowed in our school systems, and with her belief, the statement she had to back it up is that there is a single, she said, a Wyoming school that might need a gun to defend against a grizzly bear. So she's using very specific words she's talking about a specific school, and then she's also talking about an instance that may or may not occur to defend her idea that all schools should be allowed to have, that students should be allowed to carry a gun with them. I think I said enough with just what I said. Is there anything else you would like to add with that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if she's lobbying for the ability for students to carry arms or just anyone to carry arms, or if it would be teachers or security in general. But yeah, the idea that one school has a problem, so every school needs to be prepared for that problem, isn't very logical in my opinion. However, I have a friend who went to a college in Montana, and they would get text message alerts about, oh, we saw a moose on campus or a bear near campus. Stay in your dorms. Do not go outside. It's not safe. Like, they have plans in motion for it. They have the idea that you can, protect yourself from it by, once you've gotten the alert, you don't go outside where the animal is. 2, there are pest controls, there are animal controls that you can call that are, trained. They're experts in dealing with these situations. So while theoretically, yes, it would be helpful to have a gun in that situation, it's that one school. Like, yeah, that might make sense, but it's not for every school. And even still, there are other ways to go about it than just having guns there, which, cause another possible threat in terms of if someone were to, misuse it.
All right. That is everything that we've come up with about our fancy new Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos. Now we're going to continue on with the incident that happened with Elizabeth Warren, and we're going to let Tommy lead that one right here. Hope you all enjoyed what I had.
Okay, so the day after Betsy DeVos was confirmed for Secretary of Education, the hearing for the confirmation of candidate for Attorney General Jeff Sessions started. That day, that evening, Elizabeth Warren, senator from Massachusetts, read from 2 letters. One of them was from former Senator Kennedy, and one of them was from the late widow of Martin Luther King Jr., Coretta Scott King. In both of these letters, she was using them as sort of a character and experience evidence to show why Sessions is not fit for office. But she read these letters in front of the Senate and was then told she was in violation of a specific rule that was created more than 100 years ago and rarely used. It's called Rule 19, which states that senators are not allowed to directly or indirectly by any form of words impute to another senator or to other senators any conduct or motive unworthy or unbecoming a senator. So you might ask yourself, well, what is it that she said? She was so terrible that they said she's imputing other senators, or she's, demeaning them. She's attacking them. The letter from Senator Kennedy stated that he believed Sessions was a disgrace to the Justice Department, and they had a problem with her using the word disgrace. And Coretta Scott King's letter, which was a 1986 letter when Sessions was being considered for a federal judgeship, she stated that based on his experience and her dealings with him, that he had a racial bias, and that his racial bias could unfairly be used with the absolute power of his office, the awesome power of his office, to, with legal ramifications, basically, with legal help, discriminate against elderly black people in terms of voting. So after this happened, it was during the letter reading of Kennedy's letter that they started to have the problem with her using the word disgrace. And then while she was reading Coretta Scott King's letter is when they told her that she was in violation of Rule 19, and they warned her, and she asked for an explanation. She was given an explanation, and as she was continually asking for more clarification on it, Senator Mitch McConnell stood up and said that she was impugning the motives and conduct of our colleague from Alabama, and requested that she be seated and barred from speaking, and the chair recognized and agreed, and then it was put to a vote. 49 to 43 said she needed to be silenced. So once she was silenced and kicked out, she went to the hallway and went onto a social media platform, Facebook Live, to read the letter in its entirety. Now, with this being silenced, it also means that for the rest of the hearing, she was unable to speak at all about Jeff Sessions. The next day, it came out and he was voted in. He was confirmed to be our new Attorney General. But the problem I have with this, I don't know what your problem you have with this. My problem is that they silenced her from bringing forth information that to me is pertinent in deciding whether or not he's fit. But also, the next day, they let male Democrats continue to read the letter, but they didn't silence them. So the ruling in what I've studied and researched, it seems that they're saying, well, it's because she said these specific words that was defaming him. It was attacking him. Do you have any?
I completely agree. I believe that the male Democrats, weren't they speaking about the same? Didn't they continue talking about the same letter the same day and not even the day after? I believe at least they were talking about one or two male Democrats continued with the letter at that same hearing process.
I suppose it's possible, but I read it was the next day in the same hearing. But yes, it was the same hearing. They continued reading it at a later time.
Yes. But I believe that that's a continuation of just senators in general on the Republican side being very sexist to take out Elizabeth Warren, who is one of the most vocalized liberalists, also a female. I'll surprise that, right? And they're just trying to take out one of the biggest voices that we have. And then all of a sudden we use some of our other voices to continue talking about the same thing, and they don't attack them. It could be the idea that she's a woman and that's why they attacked her. It could be the idea that she's just one of the biggest faces of the liberal side, and that's why they attacked her. There's many reasons. However, none of them are valid reasons.
And another problem I have with it is that this rule is an old rule. It came about in 1902, but it's rarely used. And senators attack each other verbally quite often, and they rarely cite this. Like back in July of 2015, Ted Cruz outright said that Mitch McConnell lies. Like, he called him a liar outright, said that he puts forth things he knows not to be true. That's an attack. That's imputing someone, or that's, accusing someone of, having a character trait or a behavior that's unbecoming a senator. But no one said anything. And things like that happen all the time. Now, the difference is, and some of the variables are, well, Ted Cruz and Mitch McConnell are both men. They're also both Republicans. So there's no party bias there. There was no gender bias if there was one in the Warren case. So my problem is that it seems to be a very selective invoking of this rule only for when it fits certain people's specific beliefs and uses.
Yeah.
And that's my problem with it. And also, it's if someone does have a racial bias and you have evidence to point towards that, that could very well, in most cases, because some people don't let their own beliefs affect their jobs, but it could affect him being able to carry out his duties fairly, because if you have a racial bias, then you believe one race is inferior or superior to another. And for the idea that you can't read a letter from the widow of one of the greatest civil rights leaders in our nation's history at a confirmation on whether or not someone should be fit for a title or a duty or a job is remarkable to me, and not in a good way. It's, to me, it's a terrible, terrible thing to happen, because that woman's voice is incredibly important in this.
Yeah, I completely agree. The idea of just silencing Senator Warren for that idea it's just beyond comprehension. Taking her out just because she's using the words of someone who's prevalent in the case that matters, and basically they're just shutting down a very important piece of information that could have completely changed the outcome of the whole election, or the whole process of confirming him. And the difference between the confirmation of him would have been that Elizabeth Warren stating this letter over some, I forget, I don't know who said the letters, who continued the letter on, but over the other Democrats saying, because like I said, Elizabeth Warren is one of the most vocalized Democrats.
I believe one of them was Bernie Sanders, but there were others as well.
Yeah,
I'm not positive who was involved, but it was along her party lines.
Yeah.
People came to, finish what she had started.
Yeah,
in a sense.
And like I said, no one's as vocalized as her, so her saying it over anyone else in the party is a completely different standard, in my opinion.
Yeah. So after all that happened again, Jeff Sessions was confirmed. He's now our Attorney General. So in my opinion, in 2 consecutive hearings, we've, especially in the DeVos case, we've confirmed someone who has no relevant experience or knowledge to the job she's undertaking. In the second case, I don't know enough. I would have to, research more about what Sessions has done in his, personal political career. But it seems to me, based on what I've read and researched, that we've put someone in charge of our legal system who quite possibly has a racial bias, and quite possibly will use that to further the unfairness of the law in terms of racial relations, and continue to unfairly target minorities.
All right, so that's what we have for you guys today. That's on Betsy DeVos, Elizabeth Warren. We will continue talking about more things that are coming out about Trump next week and all of his cabinet members. In new information on Trump, there's not really much going on. He's taking a second vacation soon.
He's continuing to spread lies and untruths. So maybe we'll do a video where we talk about some of the the more outrageous lies he's told, or the more outrageous tweets, because that's all he does apparently.
Yeah.
There are outrageous tweets that he sends out. Also, excuse the mess that we're in. We're out all night because someone had to go to the hospital until 5 a.m. But we also, I imagine, we're going to try and get back into the more nerd culture stuff, so we're not just bombarding everyone with politics every week, because we get enough of that as it is. So maybe we'll go back into some of the comic book or superhero movies that are coming out, or anything like that. But
especially with Guardians of the Galaxy, we got Spider-Man coming out,
March.
Logan.
But either way, we're going to continue at least both sides of this, because I know for he and myself, this has kind of been just dominating our mental focus as of late. Both of us have spent more time reading politics in the past 2 weeks than we have in probably the 24 years of my life before that.
Definitely.
That's what I mean. It's that's why it's we're doing so much of it, because it really is dominating at least our mental focus at the moment.
And continuing on that, like I said before, I mentioned it once on Facebook. We're probably not going to let up on Trump until he turns into what we consider to be. Doesn't even have to be a good president. Just has to be an okay. If you're an okay president, by all means, I'll let you continue on. Like I look back at our old presidents that were in my lifetime. At least they were okay. They weren't this horrible. Nothing I have seen has been this long. Granted, I haven't been alive that long.
Yeah, and for me, it's when I see him become a fair and just president, a constitutional president, because he's kind of just doing whatever he wants right now with no regard for the law.
Pretty much. But like I said, we're still in a war on Trump, as I like to call it, and it ain't going to hold up. Anyone out there who wants to say something about Trump and wants us to talk about anything that he's been bringing up, we'll do research. We'll talk about it. We'll argue with you. If there's ever any big events that we hear about ahead of time, we'll definitely, like anti-Trump rallies or anything like that, we'll definitely try and get info and pass that on to you guys. So that way anyone nearby or far away that wants to go can go to these things. I know if I ever see one within a reasonable distance that I can obtain going to, I'm going to be there. I'm sure I'll bring this fool along with me too. Any last words for you?
Not anything that I can say that, won't offend people. So I'll just say I don't like Trump, I guess.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Don't swear. As long as you don't swear, go ahead and offend Trump all you want. Go for it.
Fudge Trump.
There we go. Very, very simple, to the point. But like I said, follow us. Hit us up on comments, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Hit either one of us up if you know us on Facebook. We are happy to respond to people about this kind of stuff. But as always, I'm Devin.
I'm Tommy.
That's been RozeLeeMc, and like I said, War on Trump. Have a good one, guys.
Love you. Kiss, kiss.